The Game Within a Game, Secrets of a College Football Signal Stealer. And there's a lot of other good NFL tidbits right here in this piece that you can get on The Athletic with Bruce Feldman here in person on The Rich Eisen Show. Good to see you, Bruce.
Good to see you.
What inspired you to write this piece?
I was having a meal with a coach I know, and we started talking about this mutual friend we had, and I had no idea this guy had another skill, that he was this amazing signal stealer. And it started to go down that
College or NFL?
This guy has mostly worked in college. He did work in the NFL briefly,
okay,
for a little bit, a couple of years. But the more we talked about it, I was like, well, I don't know if this guy's ever going to want to even anonymously talk about what he does and how he does it. I was like, why would he want to do that? But then when I approached this person, he was like, yeah, I'll talk to you. And we had, I don't know, 3 long hour conversations at a time and started to go down that rabbit hole. And then the further I got, the more I was like, okay, how widespread is this? And so I started calling other coaches, and then I wanted to see the comparison between that and the NFL and talk to guys who worked in both. And then it's just fascinating. The more you talk to another couple guys and they go, you need to talk to this guy. He's awesome at it. Like, he's the best I've ever worked with. And you find out how that guy did it, and talk to guys in the NFL. And it was so fascinating to me on so many different levels, because it's been going on for so long. And some of the stuff you're like, okay, that's kind of elementary. How could you not figure that out, kind of thing? But it happens so fast. And in college, the players can't retain that much. It's not like it's their only job all the time. So some of the signals can be pretty basic, but then there's a lot of stuff, when you see in college, you have like 3 different signalers. And my signal stealer guy explained to me, he goes, it's actually not as hard as you think it would be.
Why not?
He goes, you are studying body language. And he goes, these guys are not actors. They're football players. They're trying to play football. So maybe they're turning away when one guy stops. Well, that's the guy, or the guy who's live is the one who's like kind of, his body language ends up coming out a little further. There's just lots of little
a step before the other 2 guys.
Yeah, there's just lots of little things that you're studying.
What about these signs of, like, now they're, Chip Kelly, who's here in UCLA, kind of started the holding up the faces, like Scott Van Pelt's face is up there, and then there's all sorts of actors and actresses. Is that all? And then now they're holding up sheets. There's sheets being held up. Well, the sheets
were trying to block people. So Arizona State, when Todd Graham was head coach, had a pretty bad reputation, or a pretty elaborate reputation for being very aggressive as signal stealers. So the sheets were trying to block people, just like when you'd see, the NFL coach holding the Denny's menu in front of him to try to do that. I had one guy tell me, he said, I was charting plays, and I didn't know it, but one of my friends who I knew really well later in the season goes, we're watching you. He's like, yeah. He goes, no, we can tell from what you're doing if it's going to be a run or pass. The run plays are a lot shorter. The pass plays are a lot longer. And he's like, yeah, that makes sense. So it's now I'm like scribbling and dummy stuff. I mentioned that to another guy I know from the NFL side, and he said, what we would do is we would have the 3rd string quarterback who's supposed to be charting plays. He would tell it to a guy who's probably on the practice squad and not in uniform. He's writing something down. I'm in front of him, and they have somebody standing behind him to kind of shield. So it's like, wow. And just when you think the coaches could not be more paranoid, you find out there's a reason why they're paranoid. I had one head coach tell me when he was an assistant somewhere, he said, we won a conference championship because the day before the game, one of our assistants happened to be watching the local news, and they saw like a local reporter doing a stand-up, and they watched, like in the background, they could see the offense running a short yardage play and kind of going through their walkthrough. And he's like, I bet you this is what they're going to run on, 3rd and inches. And it's exactly what they ran. And you could see, like, I went back and watched the actual play. This is from, 5 years ago or so. And you can see them blow it up.
Bruce Feldman here on The Rich Eisen Show. And reading your piece, it's amazing. When the news came out a few weeks ago, I had a reaction. I'm thinking many fans who were listening, watching the show, had the same reaction to the news that 5 fewer headset-wearing people would be allowed to wear headsets on college football sidelines and booths this fall. And I read that, and I'm like, why are these coaches so upset about it? Like, what is the big deal? And I thought what could be a big deal, what couldn't be a big deal. And then I read your piece, and I see like sign stealing may have something to do with the reason why coaches are so upset that so 5 fewer people who might be assigned to stealing signs with headsets to immediately communicate it to somebody who can actually affect change on the field.
Yeah.
That's what they're upset about?
That is a big part of it from what I'm told. So now the rule is there are only 20 headsets, which sounds like a lot, but you have 10 assistants, a head coach, 4 players, that's 15, 4 graduate assistants. Now you have 1 headset for some off-field
omnibus
one
headset.
So who's going to get that headset? Well, one of the best signal stealers, from what I've understood, when I asked him about this, he goes, well, what the issue is going to be is you can't do it really from field level. He goes, what, are you going to stand next to the defensive coordinator? He's like, you can't, it's hard to write stuff down. It's not like you're sitting at a table where you have binoculars. You can't really do it from field level. You're also kind of affected by 80,000 people in the crowd where you can, it's just harder to focus in on. And so after having that conversation, it was funny. I looked back and saw who the head coach seemed to be the most outspoken and aggrieved by this. And it was a head coach whose team I heard a bunch really is very proactive in signal stealing and trying to do that with a bloated staff.
So is there any other reason why someone would be upset of 5 fewer
I'm sure
headsets?
there could be other reasons.
But it's definitely going to put crimp in.
It's
Is that the reason
intel.
why is that the reason why this rule was put into place? To
I don't
try
know if
and combat sign stealing?
That's the only reason. But like there was talk about adding more technology to the game because certain technology companies would like iPads in the coach's box. And this one guy who is like, I don't want to say made a living at signal stealing, but that was a big part of his MO. He's known by guys on his staff as the guy at different places. And he said, if you have that, he goes, coaches are going to get tempted. They're going to start filming guys signaling. That's just how human nature. These are ultra competitive individuals, and we can't have that.
Shooting people giving signals. Where have I heard that before, Chris? You want to help me with that one? People trained, like a camera specifically trained on people signaling in place?
Look, I've been telling you guys,
does that ring a bell?
if you're not cheating, you're not trying since about 2005. So thanks for finally getting on board here.
I want to hit that in the NFL stuff that you've uncovered. You pegged one team in particular that has had a reputation for it from back in the day.
They're the best, or maybe they're the worst, however you want to call it.
Well, I mean, and it's still sensitive, I bet. And I want to hit that a little bit in 60 seconds. And then the general sense of what the community of football coaches feels about this endeavor. Bruce Feldman, it's a fascinating piece in The Athletic, The Game Within a Game, Secrets of a College Football Signal Stealer. That's next in 60 seconds. All right, I'm in my Mexican kit, Del Tufo in his Japanese kit. We lost our World Cup bet with the clean-faced Chris Brockman, whose Argentine team got a garbage goal late against France that got him through in our silly competition. That is why I am dressed like Landon Donovan in a bank ad. I've got my friend Bruce Feldman to my right. Great piece, The Game Within a Game, Secrets of a College Football Signal Stealer. I mean, inside stuff, to say the least. Including the fact when you talk about the NFL, you mentioned the Indianapolis Colts as a team with a reputation during the Dungy Peyton Manning era of sign stealing, and you even got a coach pegged, named in this piece, who was particularly good at it. Correct?
Great at it. Yeah, legendary. Howard Mudd, the longtime O-line coach. So in his, I think, a dozen years or so with the Colts, fewest sacks in the NFL over that stretch. Obviously, they threw it a lot with Peyton. But so I talked to somebody who was on the Colts then, who just raved about how good Howard Mudd was at it.
A former Colts player is how you referred to this individual throughout the piece.
Not only was he great at it, here's the thing.
Howard Mudd.
It was not just an urban legend that everybody knew about. So it was like when you go into this game, we're not talking college kids where some of it's really elementary and, hey, this means the power or this means the power. It's like they were doing stuff that would be very subtle and different things. Because like we gotta be extra careful because Howard Mudd is going to be on to us. And then it was the way to, as this person with the Colts explained it to me, it wasn't just that Howard Mudd would eventually crack the code. He would be able to communicate it back so they would have this chain of command to get to Peyton Manning to know, okay, is there pressure coming? Is it not? And Peyton was so smart and is so smart that he was able to attack, figure out what was going to come from there. So it was like two parts of the process. And obviously, you know, as this person said it, that's where the magic was.
Now, I will not ask you to out your player. Obviously, you wouldn't. But if you don't mind me asking, how concerned was this player communicating this to you, Bruce Feldman?
This player probably would prefer, like, thinking there's a sensitivity to this.
Damn straight there is.
You know,
to this day in 2018.
Yeah, and what he said to me conveyed to me, and I think this was genuine, not just him saying, well, this is the reason why I want to cover my tracks kind of thing, was that you don't want it to take away from any part of Peyton Manning's legacy, because in a lot of ways, this kind of underscores how brilliant he was, because he was able to get that part of the information. Now, other people can go, well, you're getting the answers to the test. But he really wasn't getting the answers to the test, but he was getting information. And it was like, okay, how are we going to manage it? And that's not to say that they're the only ones doing it, but from everything I had heard, they were the best doing it.
So I asked my Patriot friend who loves to say, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. You fine with that? You fine with that? Because if you're going to be able to glean this information and other teams don't protect that information, this is before the headset was allowed to be put, an earpiece was allowed to be put on a defensive player, which has removed a lot of this from the game. So you fine with that?
It's on you to protect the information.
Is that the general sense you get from industry folks who spoke to you about this?
It is. I think what kind of separated these guys with the Colts is, like, colleges don't radically change signals. They're dealing with college kids. A lot of times these college kids, they're trying to remember where they're supposed to line up on a given play, much less all this other stuff that's happened on the fly. With the NFL, it's next level. And as you said, when the earpiece went in for the quarterback and for the Mike linebacker, that cut down on some of this stuff, because in college, you guys see a lot of no huddle. They don't have the earpiece.
Right.
So there's a lot of, and you have less with college, you have less, I don't want to say less intelligence, but you just have less experience, less savvy guys.
That's right. I mean, look, the number 3 overall pick in the draft, Sam Darnold, every single time he went to the line, they would hurry up. They wouldn't huddle, but he would stop after they're lined up and just stare at the sideline.
Check with me. That's the thing that scares people.
Stare at the sideline.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's not the only one.
No, that's most of them. That's many of them. And I think what you would see, like, I had an offensive coordinator who's relatively young tell me, he goes, my defensive coordinator, this is college guys, he goes, I just want to know if it's run or pass. And he's like, it doesn't work that way anymore, because whether it's RPOs, we have all these, and this coach said, I call runs like 75% of the time, but it will turn into run pass, 50-50, because that's what the defense is kind of reacting to. So we're going to counter punch to it. And I think when you talk about the level on the NFL side, and this is a part that, we didn't have room for this part in the story. I talked to a coach who they would face the Patriots quite a bit. And he said, you might get Tom Brady once, but he is going to burn you the next time.
What do you mean by get Tom Brady?
The example they had was they thought they knew by the stagger of his feet in the red zone which way a handoff might go. They blew it up, from what he said, once. The next time was like a walk-in touchdown.
So that you mean this. They did understand a Brady tell once, but Brady and whoever else, Belichick or what have you, picked up on the fact that they found that tell and used it against them the next time around.
And NFL teams, and I've heard this about Sean Payton and Drew Brees as well. These guys self-scout so much, they are able to take advantage of when they think that you're on to them with something, and they will burn you with it. Whereas in college, you don't see that as much, because they're just scrambling to deal with 100 kids.
And you think, we sit here and say, well, how much action is in a football game? Technically, like 10, 12 actual real live minutes, because once the play is over, the play clock just rolls 30, 40 seconds. This is all happening within that 30, 40 seconds in between plays.
One of the guys is telling me, and this is an NFL guy who used to be in college, and he said, you would be shocked at how much stuff you can get off a TV copy. He goes, but when the audio quality now is so good. Now it's not, there's different games, different, amount of cameras per broadcast in the NFL, obviously. But he said, you could hear stuff. If I'm a defensive lineman He goes, these guys go home with their iPads now. This is all they're doing. Not this is all they're doing, but this is a big, this is their careers. They can study cadence and the sound and pick up on stuff. And he said, they will know you better than you know yourself.
Man. And I know,
Wow.
I know college teams swap tape, right? And, and that's at least that's the gentleman's agreement that you give us tape on you. We get tape from you, right?
And that's another layer of this, because now there's been, and this one particular signal shooter said, my head coach was really ticked off because you can't tell. Sometimes they cut out where the motions are. Like, you just see it like, okay, they're going to snap the ball. Well, that's not right. But instead, because the people who are taught to, they're film guys, or say, hey, make sure you do not cut to any stuff where they can see the signaling coming in, because then you're giving away our stuff. And so it is, again,
So
I don't want to say it's
snaps?
paranoid, because they are,
Wow.
like, they have a reason to be paranoid, because there's so many examples. I think of this as a reporter, where you're just like, man, they're really cutting down on access. But you get why, because little details get out, and those little details can be huge differences.
So last one for you here, Bruce Feldman. Based on everyone you spoke to and your knowledge of the game as long as you've been covering it, last I checked, there is a poop ton of money in college football. If it was decided that they were going to spend the dollars and cents to get 2 helmets like the NFL, one for the quarterback, one for your designated linebacker, and every team in major college football now must play football with the helmets where you can directly talk to the quarterback and directly talk to the linebacker, would college football coaches go for that? Or they just are so used to and like this system of stealing, that the system of stealing, the culture is so ingrained that they'd say, forget it. We don't want those headsets to remove it.
I think some would, some wouldn't, because remember, a lot of teams don't huddle in college. So you still, let's say, as my understanding of it, it's a one-way communication. It's from the head coach to the quarterback. Well, there's still got to be the quarterback signaling out to the receivers, or signaling out to the rest of the offense, because unless they're going to decide to be a huddle team. And so much has changed because of the up-tempo. We talked about Chip Kelly a minute ago. It's just like that stuff has ushered in a new era where it has changed everything. And so, when signal stealers, the thing that scares them the most is like the first play of a drive, or right coming out of a quarter change, because you have a glob of 28 guys. You don't know who's personnel. You don't know who's going to go on the field. They can communicate it differently because they have everybody there. It's the one time where you can say, okay, we're going to do exactly this, because it's not like, they can control the message then. Once they're out in the field, if they're not in a huddle, it's like all bets are off.
Great chat, man. And I really appreciate you coming in to talk about it, because so many folks in your profession write an article and then don't want to talk about it on a show like this because they're concerned that folks might not read everything or might not seek it out. But you, just so I can tell everybody, you've scratched the surface of about 15 to 20% of the material that's in your piece. It's so great. It's so deep. And I appreciate you coming on to talk about it. Check it out on The Athletic. Again, it is all about sign stealing in professional and mostly college football, which is right around the corner here the day before, July 4th. Labor Day is just around the corner, man. Can't wait for that season.
Can't wait.
Look forward to chatting with you later on this month and certainly August to get ready for that season.
Yeah, media days in a week.
Is it really? Which ones? All of them?
Big 12 starts first. Big 12 and SEC a week from Monday.
Oh, so Nick Saban with his – do you notice he taps the podium a lot?
Yeah, you can tell he has body tells where he's a little.
What's his body tell? What if we cut up the tape?
There's
on
a rocking
Nick?
and a swaying from side to side. And
There's his cadence is "ite." He uses that word "ite."
He does.
You guys, he uses "you guys" a lot.
He has about 6 of them. If you watch him in that hour when he speaks to the SEC group,
Yeah.
he will pick up a bunch of them depending on his mood.
So what his mood is? When you know he's in a bad mood?
I think the swaying side to side mean I'm disappointed in you guys. Don't go any further with this line of questioning.
Stealing signs even at the podium. That's the way we go. At Bruce Feldman CFB on Twitter. We'll chat again soon.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.